Today in the shop, we have a very special project to work on. We're going to pull the carbs off on the FZR, try to get them really cleaned, and we're looking for a minor leak that we've had for quite a while, and it's gotten to be a real leak now. So I want to get this done today. It's really a 2 or 3 day job depending on how many interruptions I have, and I've got to work around the fact we're in the holiday season, and Karen needs me upstairs to taste cookies. I'm the official cookie taster of the family, but anyway, we are going to get these carbs off the bike and see if we can cure that leak. I'm confident we can at least get some part of it done today. At today's little shop project, and I want to get this done as soon as possible because anytime I have an issue like this becomes the top priority on the priority list. Now what happened with the bike, I went to go take a test ride. We had done some work on the bike and I wanted to go take a test ride. Put it out in the driveway the other day, started it up, let it run for a few minutes, and I look underneath the bike was a little puddle. And I thought, oh my God, here we get antifreeze or oil or whatever. Well, it was gas. And gas is, when we bought the bike, just to make this little history up, it had a different set of carburetors on it. And Luciano had it in his garage, and several times while he was working on it, he came out in the morning and there was gas all over the garage floor. I remember that, boy, like it was yesterday. And Luciano went and bought another set of carburetors. It's why I have several sets of carburetors. And I bought a used set, so I really have parts to probably make 3 sets, I don't know, somewhere here. But that's not the point. The point is anytime I'm dealing with gas, a gas leak in my garage, I really get into the panic mode. So what I did, I totally cleaned everything off, made sure I didn't have anything else dripping on the bike, but today I want to take it apart and see if I can find where it's leaking from. A lot of times it can be most obvious, like it was with the 750, the Viton tip on a carburetor shutoff doesn't seal and one carburetor drips all over the place. We went crazy with that with the FZR, with the 750. The FZR really, in the beginning with that original set of carbs, was just a nightmare. The second set of carbs seemed to solve the problem. Now we need to see if I can trace down this leak conveniently today, and then if I can order the parts, get the parts, buy the parts, make the parts. And that's the adventure of having a collection of motorcycles that they're as old as I am. So the first order of business, as always, is to play parking lot attendant and basically get the FZR to where we can work on it in the middle of the shop floor. So a real top priority working with gas is, as I'm moving all the motorcycles around and making room, this is a rubber back rug, and by the way, these are about 10 bucks in Home Depot, but it's rubber back. Now the reason I have a rubber back, because if any gas while I'm working on this gas is going to drip, oil or whatever, or I'm doing an oil change, this keeps my beloved used rugs from getting any worse than they already are. But the main thing is I don't want gas getting onto the rug to where this garage is going to fill up with gas fumes. I'm super careful when I'm working with gasoline. So before I start pulling the bike apart, I wanted to have it up on the center stand, the removable stand, whatever the hell you want to call it. But main thing, that makes it a little bit easier to work on a bike, and I've got the mat underneath. I'll throw a towel even underneath that because I don't want to have gasoline on the rug if possible while I'm doing this job. And I've got the back facing out. I'll open the door even though it's brutally cold out there. So when I'm test running the bike, I don't have to be on suicide watch out here. Now that should allow us to look down and see if we can see the leak in there. I don't know if we can. I'm going to get one of those little Harbor Freight flashlights and try to see if I can light that area up a little bit. I don't know how much this is going to help. See, I can look in there and I'll be able to see with the tank up like that, get some idea if I can find first off, which carburetor is leaking and then where is the leak. So the first thing I'm going to do is take an old rag and try to get it underneath the carburetors, so if any gas does drip, it doesn't drop on the motorcycle, or even worse, on the floor, because while it's running, the exhaust will be, at some point in time, get hot, and then you have a fire issue. And by the way, I always have my reliable fire extinguisher here, which I haven't had to use yet, luckily. Okay, so with that rag under the carburetors, and we know the gas has to be coming from the carburetors, and a good general rule is anytime you have a leak in anything, things don't leak uphill. Unlike electricity, electricity goes everywhere. But a plumbing leak, and I just fixed other plumbing issues in the house recently, the leak is here, everything's going to drip down. The leak isn't here, and it drips up. So the highest spot that's wet is going to be where you look first. Now that didn't take long. It looks like the leak is right up there between the two carburetors. That looks like where it's leaking from. Right in between the two outer carburetors. So I'm going to let it run for a few minutes and just confirm what I think the problem is. I think you can see the leak pretty well right there. So my feeling is the highest spot that's wet is right there between the two carburetors, and that may be the first place we'll look. So the first thing here is to pull the carburetors. So I hope I'm right in determining that's that end carburetor, and I'm hoping, you know, I don't get a dead battery because I only have about 30 more of these flashlights. So anyway, this I think is going to be an all-day labor-intensive job, because pulling this bike apart is always, pulling the carbs off is usually a lot of work. And then I can at least get out of the tundra here and get down to the cellar where it's nice and warm and work on it. That's why it's always handy to have our quick disconnect fuel line. That just makes this job just a little bit more palatable. Always make this front pin the last thing to take off. So it looks like this float bowl, the float might be stuck or damaged, but it's definitely leaking, and I've got the rag under there to catch as much of this as I can. So I guess the next thing is it is a big job getting these off, because the screws are very hard to access. You need clamps are in a very awkward spot. So but having this light, and let's see if I still have that special little screwdriver that bends around corners. But next step, take off the carburetors, and it's this one here that's leaking for sure. And maybe it's not leaking at that O-ring like I think. Maybe it's leaking at the float bowl. I don't know. Now if it were this one, I would even try to just take the float bowl off, put a towel under here, and see if I could do all the work without taking the carbs off. But this one, it would be impossible to get in there and get that the last screw. Oh my God. And I've done this so many times in the past when we were fooling around with different jetting and everything and going to track day. But it's just got to be done. I've got to get the throttle cable, the choke cable off, the fuel line off, and then work those screws. And this gets to be really time consuming. Now, from having done this, first time this happened, I couldn't figure out, there's a little fuel strainer, and it looks like it's pretty clean. So, but that little fuel strainer does go, let me move this up. It goes into that pipe, and I don't want to lose this. I'll keep this separate, and of course I'll clean it very well with carburetor cleaner. But that's the main fuel feed right there. And see if it's leaking at this O-ring here. I'm going to check the float bowl first, but I do have a spare, I call it a fake gas tank, that I can put this back and see if it's leaking, and I can run the engine without the gas tank. And that was Luciano's idea years ago, to make that fake gas tank, and we've used it several times. Now, because we were racing this bike and using it on track day, I have everything that goes around a throttle cable. Everything is safety wired, maybe overkill, but all that safety wire has to come off, and that throttle cable has to come off, and the choke cable. Now, it's usually easier to get the throttle cable and the choke cable. In fact, it's almost impossible to get to the choke cable without physically taking the carburetors off. So the next step is to get at those I call them the screws in the black hole of space. I don't know how they, Yamaha must have they must have, all the people that work on these Japanese bikes, little tiny fingers. Not exactly like I have. I have the, I don't know, big fat fingers. So while I'm working out there, the bride is graciously invited me to have a cookie tasting. Let's see. Oh, bake about 2 more dozen. I can taste the caramel. What are these now?
These are pumpkin butterscotch cookies
Oh my God.
with sugar on top.
Oh, delicious. So that's a nice break, but it's time to get back to the tundra. You know what I always found out? You take a break like this, and I get out here, Luciano's not done working on a motorcycle. No, they never come on a day like today. Actually, Luciano's been so much help over the years, I ought to buy him some of those cookies. But anyway, I've got to get to those screws, and it is a really, it's difficult. It's not this, I remember this part of the job being, last time I did this, dedicate the day to it, and take lots of breaks. Now, thanks to the power of Karen's cookies, we've got the hard part done. Okay, but that's a milestone in the job, believe me. Wow. Now the only thing really left to do here is just get a rag and clean this up a little bit. And the biggest thing, get the cables off, which that'll be easy now that the carbs are off, and then bring this down a cellar where we can work on it. And my great quartz heater that I've had for so many years, that's what helps make, when you're doing this kind of work, just makes it possible. Now before I even start releasing these cables, I'm going to take paper towels and put them in each one of the intakes, because if you drop a screw down in the intake, or you drop, a bird flies over and lays an egg, it's a big problem. I know it sounds like, oh, I wouldn't drop anything down there, but you know what? See, this one is still dripping. So, anyway, we're going to, once we have it down a cellar, it'll be a lot easier to work on. And with that cable released, that's the only thing left is to take care of the throttle cables. And boy, I can't wait to get out of this cold. Another really useful tip when you go to take that throttle cable off, put all the slack you possibly can in. Just makes getting it off a little bit easier, and believe me, you need all the help you can get. But with all that extra slack in it just makes it easier. And once those cables are off, we have our parts. Now before I take these downstairs, I just want to get some of the outside grit off of them. Haven't done this cleanup in several years, so a lot of residual junk and goop. I'll get some compressed air. We'll clean these up as best we can. So we can do the rest of the work down in the cellar. Boy, will that be a joy. I got the church bells to keep me company while I'm doing this cleanup. Support, and no point not cleaning up as much of this goop as we can. We'll just make putting it all back together a little bit easier. Well boy, this was a long work session. I didn't expect it to take this long, but we're all set to get back into the warmth of our cellar at last. Oh, here in the warmth of the cellar, everything changes now. Now, as crazy as this sounds, I know I have the factory manual with all the specs for the jetting and everything. So, and believe me, I have studied that book. One of the things I do with that book, whenever I have to go somewhere where I'm in a waiting room, I have to go for a doctor visit or something, I take one of my manuals and I just look around. So it's going to be the same amount of time I'm there if I read something or if I just stare at the light bulbs. But anyway, now I know for sure this is the leaky carburetor, and I want to make sure, as I say, I don't want to drip any gas in the house. But I want to look at all the possibilities. I'd say the most likely common thing is the screws on the bottom of the carb get loose. The gasket is bad. The floats can be at the wrong height, or if there's a pinhole in the float, it's letting too much fuel in. So I don't know about that. So the first job on this, and this is the bad carburetor. And let's just make sure that, yes, it's the one. And so the first thing would be, and I will do this as carefully as I can, is make sure the float bowls haven't loosened up, or that the screws are stripped. Now, believe it or not, those screws are not that tight. I'm kind of thinking, that may be a problem. And yet these are super tight. So, okay, so it could be that one of these, or both of them, being loose is the problem. Yeah, that screw is stripped is the problem. Okay, so before I go any further on this, I've got to resolve that these two screws, let's just make sure. Oh yeah, tight as can be. Tight. And I'll check all of them. Now I noticed, since I bought, well, Luciano bought these carbs, that I noticed something that gives me a cause for concern when you buy stuff off eBay. That there's several screws that have been replaced. These are the stock factory screws, and on this one, 3 have been replaced. So I'm thinking a good place to start here is these 2 could be contributing to the problem. And yeah, they're stripped. Yep. Now I'm wondering, I think I can get longer screws and just put a nut on that side as a not a temporary fix, but again, I don't even know if this is the problem, but I'm going to have to take the float bowl off anyway. So resolving this, I guess we're at the point where we don't have every choice in the world. And the fact that the other 2 don't have factory screws, in fact, let me see. Nope. Every carburetor here has some I call them replacement screws. So I guess the first thing I had to do is go out to the garage and get my bucket of replacement screws, because without that, I'm going nowhere fast. Now, these are nice and tight. So when I put the new screws in, and I want to look in a float bowl, of course, that's why I'm taking this off. And if this is all dirty inside, then I guess I'll take the carbs apart and do a clean. Actually, I ought to do a cleanup anyway. I always want to keep it as simple as possible, and I'll tell you the reason. I renovated 3 older 100-year-old plus, including this one, houses in my life. And I learned an important lesson about plumbing. If it's not leaking, don't touch it. As soon as you go to touch one thing, you replace the toilet in the bathroom, and the attic, the lights don't go on. And then you do something else, and the car doesn't start. It's, let's see how dirty this is. Yeah, it's got some schmutz in there. So, before I do anything, let me just, since I'm trying to do this religiously, it doesn't pay to. Now I'm ultimately going to have to put the fake gas tank on the bike and run the bike without the gas tank on, for a simple reason. I want to make sure this isn't leaking before I put the whole bike back together. Now, to be honest, too, these gaskets look 1,000 years old. I may have to get Sudco. I have the Sudco catalog, so I may have to make this a 2-part job and get all new gaskets or whatever, if we can't get this to stop leaking. And by the way, the Sudco catalog, wow, is it a lifesaver when you come to do jobs like this? And this may be the bad guy right here. But while I have this apart, one of the things I'm going to do, I'm going to check that I have the correct jets. Now this bike has 2 different jets on the end, and these 2 are different than these 2. I want to check that hasn't been compromised. I'll check the pilot jet, clean that all out. Basically, a lot of this job is just going to be just what I'm doing right now. Just clean everything up before I get to any of the steps that sealing it up and making sure it doesn't leak. But in the end, I'll have to figure some way of hanging up the fake gas tank and holding this to see that it doesn't leak. So a couple little tips I learned the hard way working on this in the past and on other bikes that have multiple carburetors. I like to work on one carburetor at a time. Now if you're an expert professional mechanic, you can take the whole thing apart. But I would rather just take one carb at a time, put it back together, clean it, check the jetting, do whatever else I have to do, and then move on to the next carb. And now I've seen expert people, I think Luciano does it this way, just put 4 trays out and put each one. Well, for me, I'm not in any rush. I know I'm not going to be able to finish this job today. This is a very labor-intensive thing, but at the end, I'll have it cleaned, I'll have the jetting checked, hopefully, and even have that, in the best of all worlds, have a little test bed that I can test that I've cured the leak before I put it back on the bike permanently. What I did, I carefully cleaned off any of the old gasket that was still on here with a well, basically a knife, and it came right off. Now, the pilot jet's on this, and these, this is funny, they give you a different turn for various years. Well, this year, I'm assuming, but I don't know, that these are that year carburetors, because these are all pretty simple. They say 2.5 turns out, it says 3 turns out. Well, the problem is, I need to make a new screwdriver. I don't have the screwdriver handy out here. Of course, I want to get in there with a nice tight fit, and I want to check that all of these, before I go any further, are at 3 turns. Anytime I have these apart, good idea to check them. People don't think this is an important thing. I think it's super important because I don't want to have that all chewed up. I want to have it, first thing I'm going to do is pull this part out, spray some cleaner down in there, clean that as much as I can, make sure this isn't all boogered up in some way. But see how nice and tight that screwdriver stays on that? If you don't have that, these are brass parts and sometimes they just make a mess. Okay, so I have that out. The spring stayed in there, but it doesn't matter. But the screwdriver now this will be, and I have the other one out in the garage. I don't know why I didn't just walk out there and get it. But now I want to take some cleaner and as long as we have this apart, we hopefully get it clean as possible. And that adjustment is going to control basically the low end running of the bike. So we're going to go right with the factory spec, 3 turns out. And the more I can put this bike back to stock settings, I know it'll run better. They're definitely not going back to the track. We want to get it as friendly on the street as possible. So we're going to try to do as many of these to get them right up to spec as possible. I don't know if I can show this, but I'm trying to reverse flush it. So it's cutting that. You can see it's coming out both sides now. And then I can flush it back the other way. Now before I put this back together, I'll put a little bit of compressed air through there. And I know I've got that circuit as clean as I can possibly, well, reasonably make it. Then to put the needle back and back it out 3 turns. And then go on to the other carburetors. And whenever possible, I want to flush it both directions. I want to take the pin out, which is going to release the shut-off. The shut-off adjustment is there. And I want to shake this, because if this has any liquid in it, whoop, there's my Viton tip. If this has any liquid in it, almost guaranteed that's the problem. It's not shutting off the fuel. So first thing I'll do is clean up the Viton tip. Looks brand new, in fact. And I do remember we did replace these at one time. So they may not be 30 years old like the rest of it. This all looks clean as a whistle. So, and it doesn't sound like there's any fuel. Sometimes this could have a crack. Don't forget it's plastic. And that's the little tang that you would adjust to adjust the float height. I wanted to show that if you attach the Viton tip to that float, the float level here, what's going to make it, it'll just make it a little bit easier as I drop it, a little bit easier. What makes it easier is not having to wear gloves, but okay, so that's got to go in there. And I remember the first time I ever did this, and I was very intimidated by all these little gefilte fish floating around, but at some point in time, now when I do one carb, to do the next one and the one after it, it'll go very quickly. And this is something we could test the shut-off. We could put our fake fuel tank on here and just see if that shuts it off. And if that doesn't shut it off, you know, you need a new Viton tip. I'm looking at the manual, and I should be finding a 125 main jet. Wow, lucky for me, we've got the right main jet in there. Now, the two middle cylinders are one size bigger, so I guess that tells you that these cylinders run hotter or whatever. I'm not sure, but we will try to get this, and we'll check each cylinder, of course. Okay, so we're lucky. We have the correct jetting there. Get the main jet out. I have a screwdriver with a much wider blade again because I don't want to chew up the main jet. I'll get that out of there, and we'll obviously compress there. It's the same thing. And the more I can flush it and back flush it, look through here, blow some through here. The carburetor has such fine openings, even the slightest, you think it wouldn't even matter, something you can hardly see, can change the whole way the bike runs. So now I've got this, at least I'm happy with, that I don't have some screwball jetting. I have to order jetting, or find it in my collection of stuff outside. It looks like we're good to go on this carburetor. Now the big thing is I'm going to seal this up, and hopefully, well, I got to find bolts that are going to fit. And I'm going to have to do, well, you know what's going to happen, and I know it's going to happen. It's going to take the rest of the day to get this done, so this is probably going to be a two-part video, because I know people don't like to watch these incredibly long videos. So, okay, this looks like, if it's my lucky day here, and it probably is, now the next step is to find some bolts and hope that that's going to be a good seal when I'm done. But I'm going to look for some way of, well, I know I've got two of these that are, well, I've got to improvise here. Another thing is to see what I have in inventory already, and you never really know until I go through this. But I know there's several screws on here I would like to upgrade. That's why I never throw the screws away. Now, I was a little upset about something. I thought I had some gaskets. I know I had them in the past, but you know what? I've got gaskets for everything in the world except the one thing I want right now. So, I don't know. Okay, so I'm going to have to bite the bullet here, I guess. That's the end of it. I'm going to have to order some from Sudco. I guess that's it. Yeah, I got intake manifold, gas. I got a gasket for everything, but the one I need today I don't have, so I will definitely order some and have them in inventory in the future in case this happens again. It's worth having them in inventory. In case you never saw a Sudco catalog, they have about every O-ring and every gasket and every possible thing in here. I got the carbs for the RD from them. I got to look through this tonight because I definitely want to have them in stock. I'm going to hope that this old is a kit. They have all kind of rebuild kits and everything. And the nice thing is, and I found this to be true, the nice thing is, if you, and here in fact it's probably exactly what I need, that if you call them up and explain what your issue is, a lot of times they can look it up for you and help you figure it out. So, and they have all these gaskets, so this will be my little project for tonight. But I think I'm going to spend the rest of the day finding bolts and clean the other three carburetors, and that's probably going to be all I'm going to be able to get done today. Now, lucky for me, the way this worked out, I did have enough screws, but I will absolutely have to get some gaskets in the future because not having inventory on these things, it kills a whole day. See, if I had the gaskets already here, already be done. But we did get the carbs, all four of them clean, so we're one step ahead for the next time we have a work session. So with the little time I had left, I did a thorough cleanup down in the engine compartment. That's about as clean as that engine's been, probably since the day it was made. But as I look back at this day, I think, well, you know, I underestimated how much time this would take. And here's a really good tip. If you know you have a job that's going to take more than one day, kind of split it in the middle. And you have two reasonable days, because this kind of work, if you rush it, nothing good can happen. So I'm very happy that at this point in the day, we're at this point in the job. That's wonderful.
Now I'm looking through my inventory here, and I do have, see, here's one of the choices I have, because I do have 2 extra sets of carbs. If I still get a leak when I do the test, I can change the float bowls out. I think these have new gaskets in them. I don't remember if I did, but that'll be one of the choices we have. But I'm trying not to mix and match too many parts. Another good reason never to throw these away, you have all those little interconnecting things with O-rings on them, which maybe still have to be replaced. We don't know, but having an extra set of carbs in inventory, you sleep better at night when you have old bikes. So what's really the point of all of this? Having old bikes is always a challenge, always a lot of work, and there's a lot of reward when you get them working right. Just guess anybody that has one of these old guys. And I've been lucky enough to have 4 that have historic plates. And I do love my modern bikes. I especially love that MT-09, but in the bottom of my heart, 2 things I love: old bikes and ones that I've already done my restoration on. And this one, I don't know how you could be happier with a restoration. And to know it's all on the channel for anybody so inclined to watch. Now I'm happy to end this on a real positive note. I spent a lot of time cleaning these up. Inside and out, we have everything we could possibly do except do the test now, because we ran out of time. And running out of time is something that happens in my family all the time, but there's just no way I could have done this in one session. So if tomorrow's a riding day, of course we'll never lose a riding day, but one more session and we should be able to get this all put back together and tested. Now, what'll be good on the next video is I can show how I make the little fake gas tank and do a little test run. And then what I think I'm going to do is let it run in a driveway or somewhere with the fake gas tank on it for a good amount of time to make sure, number one, that all these little connectors, see, here's the problem now, that I don't know for sure if this is going to leak anywhere else. I assume it was those float bowl things were loose, they were stripped. I put extra, and this one has an extra lock nut even beyond it. It looks like the nut is loose, but it isn't. I didn't want to take any chances. I put that because that was the side that was leaking. So I've got it double nutted now. And I'm just hoping I haven't left, I hope I didn't leave out any steps here or leave out the float bowls or something. But by doing one carb at a time, it just makes it a lot, well, it's not an easy job and it is time consuming, but in the end, when you have it done like that, it's very satisfying. So we're making haystack. What did Grammy call us? Haystacks? Haystacks we're making today. And you can make one of those red velvet cookies. They're in the bottom of the cabinet. Look at this, Miles. Check it out. Is that nice? Whoa! No free samples when Grammy's not here. Ooh! So much fun being a chef. Restoring these old pots. This is our cooking project. This is haystacks. It's mixed peanuts and noodles. And we're going to pour chocolate and caramel over it. And Miles is doing it. Miles is taking free samples when Grammy's not here looking. How many of those did you eat already?
The first one.
Yeah, I saw you had 2 before. This is the hard part, the stirring of it up. This is why they pay me a lot of money to do these jobs. Sprinkle it in. There you go. This way you get more free samples.
Okay, Grandpa, you want to mix it?
So how long before we can eat these?
They have to chill.
Right now?
They have to chill on the porch.
Oh, just put them outside. It's below freezing. These really are delicious, I'll tell you. They're called haystacks. One of our favorite holiday traditions. So in the course of this day, I had to sample a lot of cookies. It was very hard doing that. I'm glad I did it. And thank you, Karen, for all the cookies, for all the good things you add to our life. And I hope your family has a very Merry Christmas too. So I really think this was time well spent. And before I end this video, I want to, of course, thank the healthcare workers, guys. I am so appreciative of the things you do. And most appreciated. That sign has been in front of my house since day one. Anyway, this is really a very long, I was thinking in my wildest dream I'd get this all done in one day. At my age, I'm lucky I get it done in 5 days. I'm lucky I get it done at all. But now we have perfectly clean. I've checked all the jetting.
And now the only thing that remains is this end float bowl going to still leak, which, well, then we're going to have to go to the next step on pulling these apart. But I'm hoping this is going to do the job. So we're in the middle of the holiday season. Yeah, every day's unpredictable. What can I say? I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks so much for watching. Now we will continue this on part 2, whether it's tomorrow or a week from now. I am looking forward, as you can imagine, to getting the test done to make sure we've cured the leak. And I'll share the information one way or another, because either way, I'm going to get this fixed one way or the other. I'm a very determined person. And I want to thank Luciano, of course, right from the very day we bought this bike. He's been a tremendous help, and I do value his friendship more than anything. But I'm looking back here at the album, and I've been trying to look through this on these cold winter days, because what I want to do is keep in mind that the whole reason for doing this, the reason for doing all the restoration, the reason for doing all the paint work, the body work, the repairs, the everything, is so that when that bright summer day comes, like you see that blue sky in the background, and you wake up in the morning and you have that cup of fresh coffee, and you look around and you say, oh my God, I've got a beautiful day. You go out to the garage, you jump on your motorcycle, and in this case, I have had so many, I think I've got over 20,000 miles on this FZR. I have to check, a little over 20. But I have enjoyed it when it was a Ferrari bike, enjoyed it from the day I got it. I don't know how to even explain that to people. I think Luciano understands. He's been on board for the whole adventure, but I have had some rides. And by the way, all these rides are on the channel. You can go back and just go onto my channel and type in FZR, and about 400 videos come up. But even a restoration, even the day I crashed it, and even some of the track days, the FZR has been a part of my life. For better or for worse. And even when it was here, it was when it was the Ferrari bike, and we got all the stickers from John Cafaro, and thank you again, John Cafaro, for all your help over the years. And God knows the amount of time and energy and fun I've had on this bike. And I look back, and I don't know how to remember a single day that I didn't, at the end of the day, say, wow, I'm glad that bike was a part of my life. And I like to share that with my friends and the people that understand it. The Mark Morgans and the Glens and Lucianos and Vinces and Bobby Navola. You guys all understand it. I don't have to say it twice. And I know Luciano understands it. And I wish we were younger. We could do more track days. So thank you guys so much for watching.